Oh, welcome back, Texas. You are watching the Connect Network TV right here on the CW. So happy to have my new BFF, Catherine McGee, filling in as guest co-host, New York Times bestselling author. Just such a great interview. You're going to learn more about her coming up in a bit. But now we're excited, right? Catherine sitting down with Lieutenant Colonel, Cathy Almond. She is joining us today. She is retired from the Air Force Reserves, but still an airline pilot today. She's going to be sharing her journey on how she's helping other women to become pilots too. She is helping women pull all the way up and do just that. So welcome, Miss Cathy. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to spread some knowledge to other women. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so excited to just have you with us. And you are actually a guest of Wendy's. I know she's so heartbroken that you are not here with her today as she's traveling, but we've heard so many great things about you. And you're really doing amazing work in this entire just field of aviation in this industry, working with women pilots. I can remember when I was a young girl, I would never see women sitting behind, on the plane in the cockpit. And today, things have really changed, and you're helping women recognize the opportunity there. So for those who don't know, can you share more about just the history of women being pilots in your journey so far?
Sure. Flight didn't start until 1903, right? That's when the Wright brothers had their first flight.
Yeah.
But women were there at the beginning. 1911, the first woman got her pilot's license in the U.S. In 1976, though, it really took a turn when Congress authorized the Air Force to have women pilots trained in the military. So the first class of Air Force pilots graduated in 1977. So that's pretty recent. The really good news is when you look at civilian flying and the students that are learning right now, about 30% of those students are women.
Cathy, that's so amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'd love to know, why do you think it's vital to have women becoming pilots?
Well, for me, I was fortunate to have a counselor in high school stop me in the hall and say, hey, have you thought about going to the Air Force? Because it's a good opportunity for you. It might be a good fit. It had not occurred to me that that would be a pathway to have as a career. So that's what we're trying to do, is let girls and young ladies know that these are opportunities.
I think we would all love to know, from your perspective as a retired Air Force Reserve and now airline pilot, could you explain the differences between being a commercial pilot and a military pilot?
Yeah,
sure. It takes a bit of experience to get to the point where you can be hired at a commercial airline. In the military, you get to be in charge of the plane when you're pretty young. So there's a lot of responsibility put on you at a young age. Commercial is more, the progression through is you get your private pilot license, then you learn to fly instruments, and then you might get a job flying as an instructor, instructing other new students, and then move on to the regional airline. And then when you get enough time, you can have the experience to get hired at a major airline.
Wow, that's fantastic. And just thank you for your service. Talk about your thoughts on the pilot shortage. I know it's been all over the news, and people are now talking about how this new mandatory retirement has changed things a bit. What are your thoughts on all that is going on now in just this post-pandemic or current pandemic, depending on who you ask, world?
So probably the genesis of this shortage is because most pilots tended to come out of the military up to this point. And there were a lot of pilots that were trained during the Vietnam War era. Mm-hmm. Those pilots are all turning 65 now. Yeah. There's a mandatory retirement age that's set by the FAA of 65. Several thousands of pilots did retire early when COVID first struck. So that kind of made the problem worse with the age coming up at 65 for all the Vietnam era pilots as well.
Wow, so interesting.
Cathy, thank you for all of this insight. This is really powerful to hear all this, especially, from someone who has lived it. So for any of our viewers who are watching and are interested in potentially becoming a pilot, what would you say are the first steps that they should take?
So really the very first step you should take is to go and get that FAA physical I was just talking about.
That's a good tip, Miss Cathy.
And then a lot of airfields and flight schools have what they call discovery flights. That's where you get to go and just kind of see, is this something that I like? Am I going to get airsick on a hot day in North Texas when it's bouncy, bouncy, bouncy?
Ooh.
You would like to find those things out ahead of time before you sink a lot of money into something. So those are the very two first steps that I would recommend.
Wow, that was fantastic. And two things I wouldn't even have thought of. But yes, very, very good. You need to know if that motion sickness is going to affect you. And then, yes, if you're healthy enough to play, because as a customer and a person up in the air, you're always a little nervous sometimes at takeoff, and you do want to know that your pilots are healthy. So that's very reassuring. So I appreciate that tip too. So before we go, I'm so happy to just that we had you, Miss Cathy. You've really brought so much. Are there any support groups out there for new pilots, or any place that they should visit online to keep them abreast to what's new and what they need to know?
Yes, I'm a member of two different groups, specifically for women aviators, but we do have men who are members as well. Women in Aviation International is one of them. And there are local chapters throughout the United States and throughout the world. It's such a supportive organization, not only providing mentors for people going through training, but also scholarships. The 99s is another one. Women aviators who support each other on life's journey. And it's not just pilots, it's also mechanics, air traffic controllers, the entire aviation industry.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've brought so much knowledge and just information for us. So yes, if you're brave, if you're courageous, if you're ready, if you're healthy, if you want a new beginning, this might be perfect for you. So thank you, Cathy, for joining us today. And we take a quick break, but coming up next, we talk about random acts of kindness and the power of being kind to yourself with Marley Q. Coming up next.